Hello everyone, this is Tiger here. I have decided that today is a good day to start a series that I don't know if I'll continue, but we'll see what happens. I'm starting a series to talk about where you pick champions in competitive drafts and what their role is within competitive games. Today I'm going to be talking about Lux, my main champion that I play, and I think that I'm best informed to talk about her because of all of my experience playing her. I think that I can look into other champions, talk about them effectively, but no one nearly as effectively as Lux. So that's where I figured I should probably start. Okay, so Lux at her core is a utility and burst champion. Uh, she's got a lot of long range abilities that are on low cooldowns, so you can try to get some poke in. You can land your full combo and try to one shot some squishies, and you're able to put down a little bit of CC, some shielding to help out the teammates. That's her role within the game. She deals mostly magic damage, obviously, and if you're in a situation where magic damage is countered by a lot of what's going on, then that's something to keep in mind. Although I think that a lot of people shy away from champions because of being worried about physical versus magical skew more often than they should. So, Lux is a champion that generally you'll want to pick earlier on in the draft. She's a little bit of a jack of all trades. She's got flexibility between support, mid, and bot lane. I don't remember seeing very much of Lux mid in competitive. Not that she can't be played there, but she does have to worry about matchups a lot more there, and that can make it difficult for her to be blinded, but you can hold that as a flex. That's why you would normally only see Lux picked first three picks of the draft for either side, maybe R4, but usually if you get later on in the draft, you already know what the other team's doing. She's not as good of a counter pick as another champion, just because with all of her flexibility, she generally has strengths that make up for her weaknesses, but she's not like super heavily indexed into having one strength that can defeat certain other things but not deal with other things. So generally she does get played in the bot lane. She's going to be paired up with another champion, and that's the defining feature of Lux in competitive drafts. Usually, she appears whenever Caitlyn is the number one marksman. Caitlyn can get first picked, and then you can add the Lux to it. She's the premier partner in the bot lane for Caitlyn. Seraphine as well can go with Lux and get complemented by just about all of the abilities. So that bot duo is still pretty strong, even though it hasn't seen a lot of use in the current meta because marksmen are generally what you want to be playing. So those two matchups are the highest likelihood of being a suitable field for being able to play Lux. You can also play Lux Sonabot, you can play Ezreal Lux to fit into a poke team comp as well as Varus Lux. But those are most of the partners that you would want to have in that bot lane. If you go mid lane Lux, then you don't have to worry about that. You're going to be more focused on your team comp as a whole. So most of the time, you're going to be picking Lux, and you'll want to have a team comp that's either a poke theme or you want to have a split push theme, because Lux can clear waves pretty easily, can get her ultimate to be low enough cooldown that she can ult just about every wave, and when you have ultimate you can clear everything except for siege minions. So that's a plus. That's a lot of the reason that you'd want to pick her. She's also pretty decent in team fight. You can flex your comp to be able to fit that. But then all of your other champions have to be pretty strong team fighters to make that work in a lot of situations, at least relative to what the other team is bringing. The types of things that Lux does is probably from most effective to least effective is secondary engage with her Q, and if you pick up Everfrost, then also with Everfrost, then poke, then burst with the combo trying to one shot someone, and then you can counter engage if someone goes in deep, and you can hit it with a Q and turn a fight around. You can disengage, but that's pretty weak because all you have to do that is Q, and if that doesn't get you out, then you're trying to slow them with E, you're trying to give yourself extra time with W, but it's very difficult to keep someone off of you, so disengage is only up against champions that don't have a lot of follow-up to their engage. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but maybe we'll get around to it when I talk about the builds. So Lux's first item that most people will always go is Ludens. You want to be able to amplify your burst, amplify your poke. Makes a lot of sense in a lot of situations. Probably the default item to go on Lux, but also is primarily good in situations where you're not up against a lot of magic resist, obviously, and you want to be able to one-shot enemy targets when you're using her burst capabilities. Then you've got Leandries, which is more focused on doing poke damage, more focused on doing wave clear. That's something that you want in a spot where you're not going to be able to kill as many of the enemy team, but your team still is relying on you to do a significant chunk of damage yourself. Then there's the other version of that, which is Mandate, when your team already has plenty of other damage besides you, and all you need to do is set them up for it. Mandate's the cheaper version than Leandries, and it's going to make it so that you can get to the rest of your build faster. And then there's Everfrost, which probably is a good item to pick into 3+ melee champions. If you need a little bit of extra disengage, then Everfrost is helpful. And really just is going to be good in situations where you need to buy as much time as possible and you're focusing more on your utility than anything else. I put some other items that I've thought about playing with Lux as far as mythics go. Crown definitely has some uses. I think it's probably best on mid lane Lux if you're up against some 1v1s that you're going to expect to have a ton of burst for all-ins. Stuff like Talon, maybe. Stuff like Zed. If you can make sure to dodge out all of the abilities before they would go for their all-in, keep that passive up, then you can get a lot of value out of it. Moonstone, if you're 100% hard committing to just being a shield champion, there are not many situations where that's useful, but you do want to focus more on the enchanter side of Lux if you're ever into a bunch of champions that are relatively tanky but don't have a ton of DPS. So if the other team has, instead of like a hyper carry, they have something like Jhin that's not going to actually do a ton of DPS. They don't have like a Cassiopeia or a Kindred either, and it's just like they're low DPS all around. Then that's where you get a lot of value out of having a bigger shield. Max W first, maybe, at least second, and then you can have Moonstone for extra healing. Locket, similar idea. I guess that if you feel like you need to be more tanky yourself for some reason, I've tried it before. It's fine, but not that good. I think that usually you get more value from Imperial Mandate than from Locket. And then Shirelia's if your team needs a speed boost. Um, I have a very hard time of figuring out how good that Shirelia's actually is, because obviously it enables you to do certain things, but you can't just math about Shirelia's. It's hard to explain logically. It's just like sometimes you want to be able to have that extra burst of movement speed, but how much opportunity cost are you willing to give up to actually get that? So I generally wouldn't buy Shirelia's, but I guess that if you're up against a lot of champions that are maybe just a little bit faster than yours, and if you can have Shirelia's that flips the table on that, then maybe that's a spot. Alright, and now for the final part, you have to know when not to pick Lux too. Uh, you want to avoid situations where the enemy team's just going to be able to dive the back line very easily. If you're up against something like an assassin, situations where you would want to build crown generally are not situations where you want to be playing Lux. So if you're up against assassins, you're up against things that have no problem going under your tower and killing you, then that's a very threatening proposition and can blow up one of the strengths of Lux, which is generally having a positive laning phase. And then having pick does a similar thing, but like specifically against hook champions, it can be difficult to play matchups. You're up against Pike, Blitzcrank, then they can make you have to play safe pretty much all the time because you're not going to out damage them. Unless you have Caitlyn, then you can mitigate some of that, or if you have Seraphine, then you can probably live through most of those situations. So that's why those two pairings are so powerful. But if you're in a situation where you need to avoid having something like that happen, then there's usually better picks than Lux. And the other thing is that if you have a combo that can get bullied in lane, then you usually don't scale up the best either. So you can be in situations where you're losing the bottom side of the map in all phases of the game. That it feels pretty rough. And if you're in a situation where it looks like it's going that way and you've already locked in Lux, then being able to flex her mid all of a sudden becomes a pretty good option. So yeah, that's most of the things that you would want to know about Lux. Imagine that there's not a whole lot of people who play competitive and also would be mainly focused on playing Lux, but she is a good champion that's got a lot of potential to be picked B2, B3, R1, R2, maybe even on B1 in some situations, depending on what the meta is, what you're expecting from the other teams. But yeah, I think that she's got a niche, and we've seen it used some, maybe a little less than it could have, but I think also there's a lot of champions that get a little bit underutilized just because there's so many champions in the game. Well, that'll just about do it for this video, and thank you for watching, and I appreciate any support, feedback that you want to give on this, and maybe we'll see a series continue out of this into all of the other champions that I don't one trick. Thanks, bye.